Nicola Mcpherson and her husband Dan Helmuth for many, many years, and they're really a wonderful group of people to work with, so I think you're going to enjoy this presentation quite a bit. And having said that, Nicola, get out.
Okay, let me get, can you hear me, everybody? Let me see.
No, they can't.
No, they can't hear me, so that's very important.
It went away for some reason. Where did it go?
And then do I?
Hang on.
Oh.
Hang on. Is this you?
No.
That's you. So where did you go? Maybe you're down here. Aha.
There it is.
I got her.
Okay.
Now you're good.
I'm on. Can everybody hear me, though? Can they
I
hear
think so.
me? Yeah. Yeah, so as you can tell, my name's Nicola Mcpherson. I married an American. I'm from England originally. And I call him my fun guy, Dan Helmuth. His family owned a farm in the Ozarks for over the last, 50 so years. It's about 3 hours south of Columbia, and I'm hoping you all will go there on Wednesday. And I have a biology, environmental science background. I was also a high school science teacher on the Welsh marches in Britain, teaching rural science to high school guys. So when I married Dan and came over here, this was sort of a natural progression for me to move into something to do with making a business out of land, so to speak. So let me make sure. There we go. Nope, turned it off. What do I do? Oh, here we go. So I hear a lot of you are from out of town. I didn't realize that. So the Ozarks is quite a bit large area. It covers 4 states, Missouri, parts of Illinois, down to Arkansas, Oklahoma, and a tiny little bit here in Kansas. The Ozarks is a French name. It came from the Indians that lived there. The French called them Ozark, which means the Indians with bows and arrows. A lot of people want to know where that name came from. And then the spelling changed, and that's why it's called the Ozarks. The Ozarks is an uninterrupted, really, forest for 4 states. It's a family farm, up to 3,000 acres between Dan's sisters and brothers. We own about 550 acres. Here we go. The feature on the farm, just to kind of give you some fun geology here, it's a natural wonder of Missouri. It's called the Sinks. It's where Sinking Creek goes through actually a cave. It's a 400-foot tunnel through there that you can actually float or swim through. So the Ozarks, if you're extension agents, research, or farmers, is really a perfect area for shiitake production. We have a wealth of second growth forest, oak, hickory. It's not the greatest timber in town. They all die around about 60, 70 years of age. It's pretty rocky. There isn't much soil. So really the whole Ozark region, particularly in Shannon County where the farm is located, it's cordwood cutting, sawmills, stave bolts, and that's pretty much what a lot of people do in the area. So they have great woodland skills. And so because of this, this is a perfect area for shiitake production because we do have a wealth of access to oak logs. So we also work with a forestry program. Originally, when we started up, because we were pretty small, we started up with literally 8 logs, and then it went from 8 to 100 logs, and then the next year it went to 1,000 logs, 3,000 logs, and then it literally mushroomed. We have over maybe 20,000 logs sitting somewhere on that farm. So we worked originally with a sustainable selective thinning program called Timber Standard Improvement in those days, TSI, where we worked with the Department of Conservation, and our farm manager knew so much about trees, we called him Part Tree. He used to work in a lumber camp. His grandfather worked in a lumber camp And so the Department of Conservation would let him mark the trees, and they would come down and check that he'd done it right, and of course he had. And so we would mark the timber, and then we would get independent contractors come in and fell the timber in certain areas of the farm. Most of the stump wood would go to the sawmills, and then the tops would be left in the forest. And normally that would just be left there to rot or, be formed like brush piles. What's so great about shiitake production is we can use the tops. There's the other thing shiitakes really want is the sapwood. That's where all the sugars are. So what we do is we harvest the cordwood out of those tops, and what's left is just literally the twigs, the brushwood. So we're really utilizing the whole tree, which is, a great way. We're getting some money from the sawmills, and we're getting oak logs for our shiitake production. And then you've got wildlife habitat left in the forest. So how do you do the shiitakes? How do you grow them? We call it inoculation. So there you see me. We often do it in the winter months. You need to do it when the sap is down in the wood. So anytime around here in the Ozarks, we do it right after Thanksgiving. So we get cordwood cutters to fell trees around that time when the sap is down and leaf fall has happened. And anywhere from then all the way through to about the beginning of March. So here I am in this little inoculation tent. It gets quite cold. So we use a little tent like this. One door, the logs come in, and then the logs get inoculated on this table and go out the back door. So how do we inoculate? Let me see if I can get this right here. So the important thing is you need a really good supply of spawn. So we do not make our own spawn, and I just met a lady from Wisconsin. We buy from a great mycological consultants called Field and Forest Products. They're based up there in Peshtigo. They're great friends of mine, Mary Ellen and Joe. They've been growing shiitake and many different kinds of mushroom spawns for many, many years. They're very reputable, and they're used to working with small farmers. So if you're going to work with any mushroom growing, I always tell people don't go crazy, start small, and then build up slowly. Because as with any farming or growing or any new enterprise, start small because you can make lots of mistakes. So what you need really is basically the spawn, a high-speed drill, 10,000 RPM. What we have learned over the years, as you can see Dan here in his younger days, we were using a Japanese drill. They're hard to source. So what we do now is we buy an angle grinder, and we've adapted that with a drill chuck head that fits the 12 millimeter drill bit that you need to drill the holes into the wood with. And then also in this picture is the inoculation tool. I don't know if you can see that. It looks a bit like a turkey baster. You basically punch that into the spawn, and then it fills up to about 5/8 of an inch, I think. And then after you drill the holes into the log, you punch that in. And then you need these daubers. We use cheese wax, which we melt, and then we cover that over. So let me go through here. So here's Dan drilling on the inoculation table. Nothing's fancy down the farm. It's Ozark, pioneered, jerry-rigged, whatever we got hanging around on the farm, made into a table. Here's the cordwood, 4-foot-long lengths of, preferably we use white oak. We have used all kinds of red oak. Red oak is okay, but, oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that'd be better for the lights off. Red oak, the bark kind of peels off quite easily after handling several times. The life on that log isn't as good as using white oak. Plus, I think the grain of the wood is tighter, and the shiitake spawn seems to like the white oak. So here's Dan drilling holes, and what we do is we drill the holes in a diamond pattern, about 2 to 3 inches apart, all the way around the log. He then rolls it down to, often we have ladies who work for me. I have 4 women and 1 guy working for me, seasonal part-timers, all through the winter months. In the Ozarks, there's no work from Thanksgiving all the way through to March because it's winter. So this is a great little business for the area. They all want to earn money for the Christmas holidays. So what I do down the Ozarks, I've done, if you're thinking about running a business, which is also my talk, how do you do this? Do you do it by piecework, or do you do it by the log, or do you do it by the hour? I've done always, and I have found the best way is to do it by the log. So we inoculate the logs. Of course, I try and make sure the logs are all about the same size. But as you know, trees do not have the same diameter. So we try and get logs somewhere in the range of maybe 8 inches at the highest down to about 5 inches diameter. We do get some larger diameter logs, and we inoculate them with a different strain of spawn. So let me get this right. I don't know, people get so confused about spawn and strain. So spawn is the stuff you inoculate into the log, and the strains are the different varieties of mushrooms. So down at the farm, we use 4 different strains. Because Missouri has such crazy weather, we have, crazy hot springs, and then it suddenly goes cold, and then we have hot summers, pretty cool fall. So we have 4 different varieties. I think we've been using Snowcap and Miss Happiness, which is a cold weather strain. They throw out some really beautiful, thick, like portobello-sized shiitakes. People in the farmer's market can't believe that shiitakes grow that big, because most of the shiitakes that you see in the grocery store are grown on sawdust blocks. And they're thin, they're watery. When you cook them up, they shrink. They have a great big long stem, which isn't really edible. So you can tell I love to promote my shiitakes. They have an oaky, woodsy flavor because they're grown on wood. They're meaty in texture. And like I said, they don't shrink up when you cook them. So diverse there, but I think that's an important thing to understand. So you can, even if you don't have an indoor growing room, you can grow mushrooms in the Missouri Ozarks, if you're lucky, sometime around March, all the way through to, depending on the weather, around Thanksgiving. That's just for outdoor production. So we roll the log down, and then they punch the holes, as you can see, this diamond pattern, with a 12 millimeter drill bit, about 5/8 of an inch in, I think, I can't remember. But the drill bit has a stop on it, so you don't have to worry about how far you go into the wood. It automatically drills the depth. And then we seal the inoculation site over, once it has the spawn in it, with a cotton dauber that's been dipped into hot cheese wax, and that seals the inoculation site. And it does 2 things. It obviously stops contamination. It stops the spawn drying out. Okay, so let's see where we go now. So this is what it looks like. It's, like I said, here's the shade house here, built out of just metal posts with 80% shade cloth on it. We're trying to mimic shaded area of the pine forest. We've kind of run out of pine forest. That's our problem right now. In the old days, we used to just do this all under a pine forest, but we've run out of space, and I'll show you what we're trying to do about it. So here's this little cheap, like $500 small tent. Here's the cordwood cutters bring in the logs, and David, the farm manager, is grading them. The big guys are over here. We're going to put cold weather strains in those particular large logs. The reason why we use cold weather strains in the larger logs is, first of all, I can't pick that up. They're quite heavy. And cold weather strains, you don't need to force fruit in a tank, and I'll show you later on. So that's a really good use of large diameter wood. Okay? This stuff we're going to use in the woods, and we're going to use it in our greenhouse. So the logs go in here, they get inoculated, and then what happens, we go inside the shade house, and we stack them in this crib stack fashion. And the reason why you stack them in a crib stack fashion is you want ventilation, because mushrooms are really fiddly. They like lots of moisture, but if you give them too much, they get contaminated, or they get green algae growing on them. So you got to give them a lot of water, and then you got to let them dry out. You don't want the bark wet. Okay? So you give them 80% shade. We do have, I don't see in here, we do have overhead sprinklers. Logs are obviously not all the same size, but they're within that range I said about. The reason why we stack 50 logs in a crib stack, so it's 4 or 5 on the bottom, and then we do them the other direction, is our whole farm is run on a 50 log rotation. Soaking, they fit in our tanks, they fit in the fruiting racks. Our whole farm is run on this 50 log rotation. In this shade house, we have over 3,000 logs that we see. So this winter, we upped our inoculation because demand is high. We inoculated 6,500 logs. We are no longer sourcing all that wood from the farm because, as you know, we would be clear cutting and we wouldn't be sustainably harvesting. So now we source wood from other farms. We have Pioneer Forest right next door to us, which is a 100,000 acre not-for-profit amazing place. It's forest, am I saying the right word? Forest FSC certified wood. And so we do use some of their land after they have harvested their wood for timber. All the tops are lying down, and we make relationships with the forester there in Salem, and he'll let my guys go in there and cut on the tops. So it's kind of a nice relationship. We've had years when it's been hard to get wood because we had an inland hurricane, a lot of timber dropped, nobody was cutting wood for a year. All the timber was lying down on the forest floor, was over a year old. You cannot use old wood. Okay? A lot of people come to me and say, oh, I got this tree that fell down 2 years ago. It cannot be old wood. It can't be rotten old wood because you want nice, clean, non-contaminated oak. Okay? Now, I'm talking in the Ozarks. I know down south they can use sweet chestnut, poplar, beech in some places. So you have to read up what's good for your area, okay? Okay, so you got these logs inoculated, and this is a perfect example, and we're seeing this right now. We've had the perfect conditions, rain every 2 or 3 days, humid temperatures, and look what happens. This is a spawn run, so from the drill marks all around here, it tracks along the sapwood here, and the perfect thing I'd like to see is this ring here, all spawn run. That's when I'm happy that the spawn is good, and we have, so you really should see this about a few months, 5, 6 months after inoculation. If you don't see that, then you need to start worrying. You're either not sprinkling them or not, or there's bad spawn. The other good thing is to, like I said, buy lots of different strains of spawn, so you don't put all your eggs in one basket, okay? So outdoor production, there's several ways we produce mushrooms right now, but originally, if you're a beginner grower, you do it outside. As you can see, you can't see the wood for the trees. There's like 12,000 logs in this pine grove. It's white and yellow pine. You've got your natural 75-80% shade. And you've got the soaking tanks you see here turned upside down. And you'll see later on some logs in the tank. So what we do is we soak the logs in the water tanks. They're just cattle tanks. We actually buy blue plastic ones now. It has to be fresh, preferably spring or really cold well water. So our water is like 55 degrees down there. So you put the logs, 50 logs in a tank, put them underwater for 24 hours. You're giving them a temperature shock and a humidity shock. And take them out after 24 hours, stack them on this wire, A-frame stacking, and then you cover them with this humidity blanket, which, if you're a farmer, is like floating row cover. I think we use Pro 50 or Pro 70. It's like 2 millimeters a square inch. So it's kind of thicker than the regular floating row cover you use on your vegetables because you're going to be using it, brushing it up and down against these logs. And the reason we put that humidity blanket on there is that it's really crucial the first 2-3 days. You want to get those little baby mushrooms to pin. And we overhead sprinkle, and it forms a little humidity microclimate. You want to get at least 65% humidity under that blanket for those mushrooms to pop. Okay? So here they are. all different sizes. People come down and pick mushrooms with me, and they go, well, do I just pick the big ones? And I go, no, it's like picking flowers. It's how open the mushroom is. Do you see the gills there and the stem? Perfect mushroom to pick is that one there, because the cap is 75% open. It's just slightly curled. Do you see that? And so, you know, some of these smaller mushrooms may also be ready to pick. So size is not the indicator, it's the openness of the mushroom. And because I sell to restaurants, you know, shelf life is so important. So 75% open, is that the ideal? Because if you think about it, you throw them in the box here, the gills are not going to get bruised. This guy up here, I think, you'll see some later on that are more open. That's fine, but I make sure I move those mushrooms quicker. These, when they're nice and dry, will keep for up to 2 weeks in a refrigerator. We refrigerate between 34 and 36 degrees Fahrenheit. It's got to be that temperature. They got to be cold, not freezing, but just above. So we're running out of space in the pine groves, so we did invest in RPM. What kind of pine was it, Dan? Yeah, yellow and white pine again, to extend our pine grove, because we were running out of space. That's why we had to build the shade house, so that hopefully in a few years' time we can expand our production into another, you know, to the pine forest next to us. And the other thing is like any agricultural crop, it's really not a good idea to keep growing mushrooms in the same spot. So what we do is we use weed blanket underneath those logs to stop any weed fungi getting into the shiitake logs. So we got this problem, like, okay, I was growing mushrooms from March to November, and the production petered off, and we had nothing for Thanksgiving, nothing for Christmas, nothing for New Year's. All my chefs, you know, went and bought mushrooms from somewhere else. So in the spring, I would have to remarket and resell, you know, trying to sell my product again. So we applied for a SARE grant 3 times. I'm not the best grant writer in town. I teamed up with Johan Brun, I think it was at that time, plant pathologist here who's doing a lot of research in mushrooms, shiitakes particularly. And the 3rd time we applied for the grant, he helped me write the outreach research part of the grant, because as you know, probably most grants want that. So we got the grant, and I invested in that grant for growing mushrooms in a greenhouse. I bought the greenhouse, by the way. The grant was for the furnace, which will heat the greenhouse. I'll show you that in a minute. So Dan, fortunately, is an engineer and an architect, so he designed this greenhouse. I should get him up here to explain it. So what we opted for, because mushrooms need humidity, we put in a radiant floor, heat slab there, and then down the middle there is a drain. And you see it's built in ground, the foundation are in ground, so that forms a nice sort of heat sink there to hopefully control the heat. And then you need a solid wall, because those logs, if they fell through a greenhouse, would just rip the plastic. So there's 2 reasons. And the other reason was we put wood in here so we could hook or drill things into that wood and attach fruiting racks. Okay? This is, I think, it's like 100 feet by 35 feet greenhouse. I think, where did I get the greenhouse from? It was a package. It was on sale somewhere, but I can't remember. It was about 8-9 years ago we did this. So you can see us putting, there's the drain, and the concrete's been poured, and we're putting on the plastic, and we lined the outside with rock, Ozark fieldstone. Tell me how much longer. So in the old days, we used to burn the spent shiitake logs. So after about 3 to 5 years of production, all that sapwood has been digested. You just got heartwood and the bark's falling off. So what do you do with that wood? It's not great burning wood. It's not got great BTUs in it, but so this is what the grant bought me, a Heatmore wood furnace. And it fits perfectly 4-foot cordwood. I'm going to move on here because I can blab on for ages. So what do we do with the greenhouse? We mimic the forest outside. So we put our shade cloth inside the greenhouse during the winter months. And then you've got your tanks there with the logs in it. And you've got your crib stacks on one side of the greenhouse and fruiting racks on the other side. Let's just see what this one. And this is really cool. This was in January. Outside temperatures, 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So that wood furnace heated that greenhouse floor. We sprinkled water on it with misters and formed the humidity enough to grow those mushrooms. And you can see they're on like fruiting racks. It's called a flip-through rack. There's like, you lie down one log and then you lean 4 against it. One log down and then 4 against it. So there's me on a January day, very happy that I got mushrooms. You'll see me on the agroforestry, whatever that catalog's called, mushrooms in the snow. So it's really cool photograph there. You can see the smoke there coming out of the wood furnace. We do have a backup propane gas furnace in the greenhouse, but we hardly ever use it. Just when it gets down to those bitter temperatures, it might kick on to keep the temperature up. One cool thing about shiitakes, if it did freeze in there just a little bit, it's not going to hurt the mushrooms. Plus they're covered with the floating row cover. I've never lost any mushrooms because they froze. The temperature can get quite low in there. So we use a strain in there. We found the WR46 strain works really well in our greenhouse. The other thing we branched out into is oyster mushrooms. That's our article in Source magazine in St. Louis a couple of years ago. What we do is we buy in those bags. They're from a mycological consultant again. And we're trying to diversify because people kept asking me, well, Nikki, do you have any other kind of mushrooms? So we started growing 3 different kinds of oysters. We got brown ones, gray ones, and yellow ones. And we grow these in the greenhouse along with the shiitakes in its own little humidity tent because oyster mushrooms need somewhere up to 90% humidity. So we have misters on all during the day with a timer. It's pretty basic, shelving, and the tent is made out of, guess what, floating row cover and bamboo that we harvest from the farm. So again, very Ozarky. That's David. He's wonderful. He's worked for me since he was in high school. He's worked for me for what, 20 plus years now. 20 plus years. You will have him give the guided tour on Wednesday. He knows a lot of forestry stuff and more technical questions. Please ask him when you're down there. Here he is coming out of the oyster tent in the greenhouse. This is still spring. We still got the logs in the greenhouse. Come around May, we get all the logs out of the greenhouse and put them in the pine forest because it gets too hot in here. We move the shade cloth from the inside to the outside to stop all that solar energy going into the greenhouse. Surprisingly enough, these oysters, the yellow ones, are tropical oysters. So then we move over to growing yellow oysters during the summer months because they can put up with the heat. The gray oysters don't like the heat. So you can see I'm using different strains for different times of year, different temperatures, different uses. This is my son Henry, who is actually a Mizzou plant science student. He was growing some tropical oysters in small bags with straw. Again, that was Pohu. I think that came from Field and Forest Products. So what happened with me as I'm going around selling mushrooms, people kept asking me, do you have other kinds? So I not only became a grower, I became a distributor of mushrooms as well. So I started buying, and I'm from Europe, so I started buying mushrooms from, of course, Portland, Seattle, Pacific Northwest, and then also Pennsylvania, Kennett Square, which has got a wealth of organic portobellos and creminis and white buttons. So I buy all that in and then sell it along with my products. Because I do that, I then am able to keep myself fully employed along with 3 other people and quite a few part-timers. So, I'm sure you all know this. We have Morel season here in April. Here's some people with a hen of the woods. There's me with a chanterelle. I think there's one here. There's Chicken of the Woods, which is out right now. Chanterelles are out right now. We picked a bunch down at the farm. And then the other agroforestry product we started moving into, Dan and I planted this bamboo about 25 years ago. It's an edible bamboo. And we actually sell bamboo shoots in the spring, which the chefs really like. Kind of goes with the Asian theme of the farm. Are you kind of seeing what I'm doing here? There's some girlfriends helping me pick them. The other thing we branched out to, which is really Dan's project, if you want to ask questions about that later on, you can ask him. We also work with Dr. Johan Brunn here from Mizzou on a truffle grant, again from SARE. We're going to be the first little farm in Missouri that has like a research plot, 50 meters by 50 meters, and we're going to plant a variety of trees there and inoculate them with the burgundy truffle, which should grow here in the Ozark climate, not the Perigord. Perigord would not probably grow very well here. So I'll skip through that. There's Johan. We set up experimental soil temperatures, stations in the plot there. You can see me there digging. There's the truffle. The other things you can grow in the Ozarks, we've just started to plant some trees, is a good old pawpaw tree. The thing is, I'm a food business, and people like weird stuff. And you can get good money for gourmet foods. It's no good me growing, cabbages and onions and potatoes in the Ozarks and then drive them 3 hours because I'm miles away compared to other farmers who are closer to St. Louis. So it's good to have an artisanal, boutique, niche food to sell. And then we have branched out. You'll see we planted some elderberry trees. Some of them we've just harvested ourselves. They're woods, things we found in the bushes or along railway lines. And what we have, because I'm from Britain, I actually make the elderflower cordial. So I don't pick the berries, I pick the flowers. So when you go down on Wednesday, we'll have some elderflower cordial ready for you to drink, okay? And then there's persimmons and grapes and all kinds of, I won't go into that because I'm sure somebody's talked about that. There's Henry. We branched out into growing a little fruit orchard. I pick wild watercress down the farm. We have a wealth of springs, which is great. So people go, well, what'd you do with all the old oyster bags? So after they have fruited, we then put them in the compost heap. After several months, we rotivate it, and guess where it goes? It goes on the vegetable garden, and then we grow a wealth of kind of unusual greens that I like to do more permaculture, perennial greens like sorrel. Has anybody tasted that? It's really lemony, citrusy. You can make wonderful sauces for fish out of it. So, every time I grow something, another $50 here, another 10 there, another 100 there, and I add that to my mushrooms. And so instead of driving around just selling one box of mushrooms for $45, I'm now selling $300 worth of stuff to one customer. So it's sort of diversifying my items of sale. The other thing is Jerusalem artichokes or sunchokes. It's a great perennial crop. Grows really well. It's a native, actually, of the area. The Indians used to eat the tubers of the wild sunflower. So we grow that. There's Henry there, checking them out. And then the other important thing, you can grow beautiful mushrooms and beautiful products and be 3 hours from your local restaurants or wholesale market, but you need to get out there and market. So this is me. I don't know if anybody knows who this is. This is the Governor Carnahan of Missouri, who unfortunately died in a air accident many years ago. So I went to the Missouri beef and corn thing, and they put me between the Missouri beef and corn people, and they were like two mushroom growers in Missouri at that time, and they made a wonderful mushroom wine sauce to put on the beef, of course. And I got some attention because I got dressed up in my little mushroom apron. So, that's what it's all about. You can grow stuff, you got to sell it. So this is the other guy, my other full-time. He's great. Andy's worked for me for 4 or 5 years. He does all the sales and marketing up in St. Louis. We have a big walk-in cooler. We have 2 vans. We have styrofoam coolers. So I ship everything up to St. Louis. We have storage facility up there. So my customers are only no more than half an hour's drive from this shop. So I become my own middle lady, so to speak. I used to sell a lot of stuff. I put it on a truck, sell it all to Chicago. I get minimum amount for the mushrooms and sell everything. And then one day, after 2 years of doing that, they suddenly dropped me. So I then learned, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So I have a very diversified customer base because restaurants, unfortunately, they do come and go. This guy is a country club guy in St. Louis. So I don't know if anybody's been to Annie Gunn's Smokehouse on Highway 40. He buys a lot of mushrooms from me for many, many years. There's Henry, a few years ago, my son. We do a lot of farmers markets. If you're in St. Louis, we do the Maplewood Farmers Market at the Schlafly Brewery on Wednesdays between his happy hour markets. You can go buy a beer and then go shop. So that's between 4 o'clock and 7. And again, even though most of my business is 80–90% selling to restaurants and wholesale, it's kind of cool to get out there and sell to the general public because they're actually going into the restaurants where they're buying, Ozark mushroom, pizza, to educate them on all our products. And then they take them home and cook them. So it's a nice little circle of food. The other big show we do if you're at is Labor Day weekend coming up, in a few weeks, the Japanese festival at the Missouri Botanical Garden. We have a food booth for 3 days, and we cook noodles and mushrooms for 3 days. Because shiitake is a Japanese word. Taki means mushroom, and shi is like a tree that's similar to a birch, I think. Have to correct me if anybody's been to Japan, but it means taki, mushrooms from like the oak tree, if you're wondering why it has that spelling. I get teased about it constantly, as you can imagine. So there's our Buddha's Delight. It's a combination of spices with our shiitakes and oysters served over noodles, toasted sesame seeds, and fresh cilantro. So $6.50, that's a pretty good deal. I think it's now $7. We put it up since I took that photograph. This that you can't see. So what do you do with all the mushrooms you can't sell? Or like this week, my hands are still ingrained with mushroom stains. We've had so many mushrooms because the weather has been absolutely fabulous for mushroom growing this year, not compared to last year. So what do you do with wet mushrooms or mushrooms that are like half as good or they're wet? So we got into drying mushrooms with a mushroom dehydrator that Dan designed out of an old warming bun oven that we got from a secondhand food service place. And now we can actually buy some commercial dehydrators on Cabela's, is that how you say it? Cabela's, there you go. Drying mushrooms is a great way to add value to your food. It enhances the flavor, and then you can keep them forever. If you keep them in an airproof bucket, which we do in 5-gallon plastic buckets. So we came up with some recipes how to market the dried mushrooms. People at first didn't know what to do with them, so we came up with some meals. We will have these on display at the farm. It's got nice little recipes. Tells a story about the farm, a little bit about agroforestry. And so it's a whole educational tool of, what we're doing. Why is our product different from those sawdust-grown mushrooms that you can buy in the supermarket? Why is our a better flavor and so forth? And that we're also supporting the local rural economy. I had another grant. I actually was going to tell you at the end about all the grants I got. I found a friend of ours is a great graphic designer, and he was like 25. He designed the logo for me and the box. And then I got a grant from Agri Missouri in those days were giving out grants for packaging, and all my boxes, I got help with the die cut and printing plates. When you're a small grower, those are huge amounts of dollars, because when you go to a printer, you can't just make 1,000. You have to make 5,000 to just make it be worthwhile. So that's a lot of money up front. So I did get help with grants on that. And the graphic artist friend of mine. So the other thing with grants, you do open houses. So we've done a lot of open houses, and you're going to be another one. So that's me in the greenhouse. And you can see how long I've been doing this. My hair is brown still in this green. Been here 25 years doing mushrooms. This is a Missouri Mycological Club. They couldn't believe it that you could pit that many mushrooms in one day. That's probably 100 pounds. That is Henry. So we've been growing mushrooms a long time, and that's Charlotte, my daughter. We did start off growing oysters on logs, which you can do, which are quite successful. But when you grow them out in the woods where we are, they get beetles and bugs. And unfortunately, the chefs are really fussy. They don't want that stuff in their food. So, and right now we still get beetles and slugs, so we have to shake them out and do all kinds of stuff. So there's Henry with the largest mushroom we ever picked when he was a baby. So that's the size of the largest shiitake. That's what not to pick. That's if you don't pick it, it goes inverted, and you can see the gills are going brown. And there's Henry again with another. So you wonder why Henry's doing plant science. He didn't, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. So yeah, it's been an interesting childhood for them. That's now what they look like 25 years later. So agroforestry is a key component to the food system. It isn't just riparian buffer rights. And I love food, as you can tell. And so I think for a farm, we have hay production, we've had cattle. It's a great sideline to our business. We also do, if you're interested, we do agritourism now. This is Dan's mom's old house down there called Beaver Lake Guest House, and we also rent that. And when people come down and stay, we give them a free tour of the mushrooms, and they also get a free bag of mushrooms. So there we are. So if you want to check out the website and recipes, there we are. Any questions? Have I kept in time? Yeah, I have. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I have. I used to sell to Whole Foods. Yeah, well, when you get into these big corporate supermarkets like that, you often have to fill out a huge 30, 40-page document. Unfortunately, I'm no longer organic. I used to be organic for about 18 years. There was an issue with the cheese wax, and now it's okay apparently, so I can reapply. But it's such a pain in the neck to do all that. But I'd like to do that again. But most people know I grow everything organically anyway. So, yeah, the supermarkets are quite hard to get into, especially something like Whole Foods. And then in the end, they only bought a few boxes of mushrooms a week, when I could sell 100 pounds to a catering company and get paid right there and then. And Whole Foods often wouldn't pay for at least 45 to 60 days. This was several years ago. Maybe they have changed their practices. I don't know. I do sell to, and it's happening here in Columbia. There's the root cellar. I sell to them. Small little pop-up local harvest, local food stores are all catching on right now. I sell a lot of products to CSA, Community Supported Agriculture box schemes. One of the biggest one in St. Louis is called Fair Shares, where you pay, I don't know, $400 or $500 a year, and you get a box of meat, mushrooms. And what happens with me, because I got mushrooms in the winter, I sell a lot of stuff to these box schemes and local harvest grocery stores, because not many farmers have products. So I can sell my dried mushrooms. I sell a lot of pestos, which we grow on the farm, which you'll see on Wednesday. So, I mean, I keep my fingers in lots of pies. And I did try and talk to the guy at Whole Foods, because I have another grower that I actually buy mushrooms from who's organic and would like me to sell them for him, but they never return the call. You know, I've emailed, and it's hard. And then they always want the cheapest. And I won't go down on my price, because my stuff is different from the sawdust ground. So it's like hydroponic tomato versus an heirloom tomato that's grown in soil. So, and I've only got a limited supply of my mushrooms, and I know I can get a good price for them. So, that's what I always tell farmers to do, you know. Don't go down on your price. Go find a customer who wants to pay a good price for your mushrooms. Yeah, anything else? No, so anyway, what was I going to say? So yeah, I forgot to mention, we got 4 or 5 grants. We're very lucky over a period of 25 years. So we got the wood furnace grant from SARE. Dan applied for a forest management plan that we applied for last year. And we got a forest audit on our farm for 350 acres of forest land we have on the farm. So we have high priority thinning and low priority thinning. So we can actually go and harvest some mushroom logs from the farm with a sustainable thinning program through that, which was, again, funded by SARE. So it costs quite a lot to get a forest audit, so that really helped us out. So we know what we've got. I just recently got a grant for a mobile greenhouse from the NRCS. And that is going to be really cool for you to see that down at the farm. A lot of people have not seen mobile greenhouses where you can extend the season and move the greenhouse from cold weather crops to hot weather crops. It's the first year I've done it, so I'm learning how to use it. And then we got a lot of help with the box, the Ozark Forest Mushroom box, and the labeling as well. So, you know, I think if you're talking to growers or you're a landowner, if you can use those tools and don't go crazy and start big, start small and build up, is really my recommendation. Yeah, and I think have fun at the farm. Yeah, any more questions?
You talked about your son, Henry.
Oh, yes.
Well, the question that I have, and I see this with a lot of
Yeah.
producers that we work with, is this just the Dan and Nicola generation?
Who knows?
Or is this going to continue?
I hope so. But I won't push that on him right now. But he helps me out a lot. But he's just in that traveling mode. He just came back from Earth University in Costa Rica. And then who knows where he'll go. So, but yeah, he does help out a lot. So I hope that will continue as a family tradition. It would be nice because it's taken me a lot to get to this point. Whether I'll expand, you know, people say, oh, you should build another greenhouse. But, you know, there's only so much wood out there. So I think right now, I'm quite happy where I am. And so because I buy other mushrooms in from other farms, it keeps it small and sustainable. I really don't want to get any bigger. I've got enough on my plate. I think one thing I really would like to move into is make the farm more accessible for agritourism. I'm really into slow foods movement. And I'd love to, like, maybe 4 times a year get some chefs down there and do a slow food type of mushroom meal. You know, educate people, because a lot of people really don't know what goes on down there. And when they come down, they're always blown away about, you know, they didn't realize that was here in Missouri. And it's a very beautiful area. It's part of the whole Big Springs natural conservation area. If you want to come down, there's a current river to go floating on. Yeah, and it's a natural business for the area. Like I said, most people are cordwood cutters. The women love to hunt and can dry food. So it's kind of I've got a great workforce. It's really a great business. Yeah. Yeah.
And they're very concerned about saturation of the market. So
Right.
concerned about holding on to proprietary information and who to sell to and how to grow things.
Right.
Do you see that
No, I think we could grow more for this local area, definitely. I mean, because I go into places and most of the mushrooms are all coming from Pennsylvania. We don't have the huge like mushroom factories here. There's one big place down on the Arkansas-Missouri border which I buy mushrooms from, but it's all sawdust grown. It tends to be a small farm production for the shiitake log production.
So when you say this local area, I mean, obviously there are thousands of acres to grow it on, but
Yeah.
to sell it, so it's like you're in the St. Louis market. Do you know of other markets that are, is Columbia, still growing market?
I think so. I don't know how many people grow mushrooms up here. I mean, I think there's one person that does. But yeah, it's not enough to feed Columbia by any means. No, I think there's definitely opening for it. I mean, so I don't want to compete with me, of course. So, but you know, that's the thing. You embrace, you know, people. A lot of people don't like selling mushrooms to the chefs. So then, you know, I become a distributor for them, and so that's what's happened. And the distance from market and shipping them and all that stuff is always an issue too. Yeah. Oh yeah, somebody's. Oh, I think.
Are you going to send me a good map?
Yeah, Dan's got you something.
You got me something?
Yeah, in case it floods, because there's a lot of storms from now on. Last time these guys came down, we had a huge flash flood, and you had to come in the back way. So I'm going to send you the back way in, which was easier to follow.
So you're going to send me a good map?
Yeah, he's all nervous. He's going to get lost.
Confused down there.
I know, it all looks the same. There's trees everywhere. So.
Great. Thank you so much.
No, it was fun.
Thank you.